cocktail recipes as usual. First, remember, this time we are helping you to smooth the pair work. So those of you, so if you're a tourist, this doesn't apply. But those of you who get a pair, please be active as soon as possible, because there's only 1 week's time, and that's relatively short, as you have probably noticed already, to get the work done. And there's a bit of a coordination to do. So be active. And especially if you know that your coming week, you have schedule issues. So please be proactive. And if by Monday you haven't been active, we might reassign a new pair. So actually, we're going to be active on the coming Monday. So that's, so that we don't have, no shows and everybody gets a pair. So please be active. And having said that, don't stress, don't panic too much. All will be fine. All will be fine. Don't worry. And Annika and Rosa, as you have noticed as well, are doing an amazing job of handling you close to 200 people, 150 at least, doing the exercises. Good. Thank you, Jukka-Pekka. Your greetings to all Rauma people. Next, this is where we are. We're halfway there, almost. So, after this week's exercise, you're half done. Or maybe you're actually more than half done, because last week doesn't have an exercise. So today we're going to use the magic words lean, agile, and design. And then we're going to talk about shared meanings, because what do these words mean? And then we have still 3 lectures after this to go. Okay, some of you might be asking, this was course about, organizational change leadership. So why is this again we're talking about lean or design thinking or agile stuff? Isn't this organizational much wider topic than these, I would say, product development philosophies? That is absolutely correct. Organizational change is much wider, especially if you go to classic organizational change, management, leadership. It doesn't say anything about these topics. However, this is a relatively small course, so we do have focus here. So we have made choices, and partly because of our background, the choices we have made. But the reason that we focus, especially today's lecture, the reason why we focus on lean, agile, and design cultures is that they are actually very practical. I'm trying to convince you in a few minutes why they are actually very hands-on practical philosophies. Second, they are very topical. Everybody and their uncle are building lean cultures or design cultures or agile cultures or responsive cultures. And they are a great example. Yeah. So that's why we have these. This picture is about agility, as all of you who know that dog competition now. Having said that, of course, there's plenty of more good literature, excellent change models, and everything that are not necessarily design focused like this. So here's just a quick snapshot I took from one master's thesis way back, where the thesis worker did a good summary of what different kind of change models there are. And some of them you might have heard. Adkar model is quite world famous. And then, of course, Kotter's 8 steps is very famous. And the third one, the Lewin Cartwright, you can see that's already from 1951, which just reminds us that there's nothing new under the sun. We have been, changing organizations and organization cultures for decades or centuries, if you will. Good. So now that that's out of the way. What did you do last week? So I spent time on the train and yesterday looking at your exercises. Super thanks to all of them. Very good reflections. Very nice to see that, good, simple stuff. And then the reflections, very nicely done. And what did come up? A couple of things I took from your answers. Just a second, I have a little bit of real estate problem here. One of you wrote that the exercise was really good because, this was the temporal onion. It clarified the need for justifying the project goals and influencing broader product adoption. And actually, many of you kind of said that this is a good exercise to kind of maybe talk to upper management, maybe talk to, outside the project. Why are we doing this project? And I think that's a very good point. That's a very insightful point, because again, we are outside the project, and who are there? We need to probably convince people, justify the project in itself. Then another one of you wrote that the best part of this exercise was the human connection. Oh, this really warmed my heart because this is a facilitating course. So facilitation is helping other human beings, helping other people. So really nice and a really good point that one of you wrote, that it's about talking and sharing with another person about, the projects, lives in general, even dreams. So yeah, this is a facilitation tool. So excellent point. One of you wrote the tool can, at its best, increase motivation. Thank you. That was exactly one of the things we wanted to do with the tool, that the imagined actual impact becomes visible, tangible. At least you're going to be talking about it. And maybe the project doesn't feel pointless. The point being that now you have context. Things have meaning when they have context. That was the onion, and now it's this temporal onion as well. It gives you context, and if everything's good, you get more meaning, you get purpose, you get justification, and so forth. A couple of more comments. The importance of understanding past experiences, which form the future vision for the project. Yes. How often we start new projects without actually knowing the history of the organization, the history of the other projects, the history of the people. Because like this person kind of says, they actually form the vision because we are building on past projects and past things that I've done. So this tool just simply makes you at least question a couple of questions. What has happened before? Last but not least, good to focus on the wanted impact and what we want to achieve with the project. Well, like you said, from last week and this week, there is kind of the end of the project is, in the words I use, different from the impact of the project. So that's a good kind of, if you're going to use these terms, you probably find yourself explaining that these are two different things. It's kind of the outcomes or the outputs. So if I use those words, I would say an output is something you deliver in a project. Maybe it's a new product, maybe it's documentation, but kind of the outcome is what actually then happens once there is a new product. What happens once there is the documentation. And one more comment, actually, I put it on a different slide. This is actually from previous years, but this was such good that I keep it here in our slides. Somebody wrote that this temporal onion, the exercise where we start with the long-term impact that happens way after the project is done, it reminds me of how golf professionals play. They think from where they want to hit the last stroke and where they need to be one stroke earlier. So they are reverse engineering all the way until they know where they need to aim the very first shot. So maybe this golf picture helps you remember that, hey, this is one way of looking way beyond the individual project, and then reverse engineering. What do I need to do now if I want to be there in 6 months or 12 months or 3 years? One of the things, sorry, I jumped over those comments because I wanted to really, because then there were a few of you in the exercises who I'm not quite sure that you kind of used the tool to describe inside the project. Maybe the project is something that lasts very long, but in your reflections, you were writing that, hey, this is really good at figuring out the milestones for the project. That's fine if it works for you. However, just to let you know, the whole point of the tool and the exercise was to think outside the project, not inside the project. Again, so you can see the bigger context, so you can start understanding world outside that project box that you might be responsible for. And the point of the tool is not to give you project milestones. It's not a project design tool as such. It's kind of a tool to help you understand the past and the future outside the project. Because only then you start seeing the larger context. You can start seeing kind of underlying large motivations. Why are people doing this? Why are different departments doing this? And then you can see the broader goals as well. And that's what we call in this course is the desired impact of the project. Hey, I got to add a nice cat picture as well. The cat in the picture is looking outside the project. Good. Golf analogy is pretty interesting. Yeah, I'm not a professional golfer. I just play mini golf. I never think that far in mini golf. I just think about the next shot. But hey, maybe I should. So just to hammer in last week's exercise, clarify the desired impact, not the outputs or the actions, what you should do in the project. And here I try to give you an examples. So maybe somebody says that, hey, this is our project, and it takes a year, and after a year, the design impact is that the website is updatable so that new content can be applied. That's the goal of the project. Okay, that might be the end goal of the project, but what's actually the desired impact? Once you have a website that is easily updated, what happens then? What's the impact? Are you just looking beyond the website? Why do you need this website? What's the bigger context? What happens once the website is updatable? Another similar example is, the point of the project is to collect lessons learned. It's to collect feedback from our customers and document what has happened. Good, great, that could be your project goal. However, are these really the desired impacts of the project? So is your project's desired impact really to collect feedback? Probably not. It's probably what's going to happen once you have the feedback. What are you going to do with the impact, the feedback, I mean? And it was really nice to see that actually many of you thought that, hey, actually the first exercise and the second exercise, they fit nicely together. So remember, the first one was the organizational context for change. Last week's exercise was kind of the temporal context. What's the desired impact way into the future? And just to make, again, the point of this course, that these are facilitation tools. These tools are not project management tools or project design tools as such. These are tools that facilitate discussions. They help you and others spot, hey, there's a problem here. This is unclear. Here we're going to have challenges. Okay, these actions we need to take. And now kind of one of the, zoom out, put your facilitator hat on. And maybe now after these two exercises, you can spot the difference between facilitating an answer and coming up with an answer. Those are two different things. So if I ask you, what's the capital of Ireland? You can come up with an answer, or you can facilitate another person to come up with an answer. And those are two different things. And the tools we are giving here are about facilitating the other person to come up with an answer. That's why we cross you. That's why the other person has to do the other person's project, because that's what facilitation is about. And that's why the tool is for the person who doesn't know the answers. So that's very, very key to start understanding in these exercises, but perhaps in your leadership, in your facilitation work, to separate those two from each other. And spoiler alert, this week's exercise is going to continue. We're going to have the third one, which is all about the success criteria for change. So how do we know that change has been successful? So here we go. The answer is we are going to play dumb. So I'm going to use this acronym. Some of you might know this quite well, but it's really good because it's so dumb. And it comes from the words that, okay, if we want success metrics, a good metric is doable, understandable, measurable, and beneficial. So, maybe you set a metric for yourself. I want to be able to run half a mile. What's the metric? Is it doable, understandable, measurable, beneficial? And then you do a metric, and And when it comes to projects that you are probably doing, which are very complex and involve many people, and you might be doing innovation that doesn't exist, writing down dumb goals is actually difficult. And But however, it's always a good exercise. Even if you don't get DUMB goals, it will be always a good discussion to have. If you don't like the word dumb, you might use another acronym like SMART. SMART goals. A good goal or a good metric is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. But in this class, we are dumb. So we use the DUMB, or you can use in your exercise other ones as well. But here's the big point first. We all know in a project, in any change, in anything that you do, goals are important. Then everybody here knows that communication is important. If there's more than one person, they need to communicate about the project, about the work, about the change. And then we all know that communicating goals is important. But for some reason, all of these are actually very difficult. It becomes very hard, especially the third one. How do you communicate goals? Why is it so hard? And here's my example, a simple one for what I mean by this. Because projects, work, things that we do collectively, we very easily do very ambiguous goals. Goals that are not clear. So let's say we have goals like these. We need more productive work, or IT skills and legal understanding are improved among the workforce. That's the goal of our project. Or, maybe our goal is that UX drives the impact, or we want to build an open communication culture. Now, the problem is this, like I put in the red, for each one. Okay, so you want more productive work. For whom? And what do you actually mean by productive? That's a little bit ambiguous. And, IT skills, we should be improved. Well, how many? Is it enough that one person's IT skills are improved, or does it mean many? How do you measure improvement in this case? And then you might have a goal like, UX, it drives the impact. Yeah. What does that actually mean? And then last but not least, we want an open communication culture in our company. So does it mean that we're kind of a closed culture now? What actually needs to change to build this? Where do we start from? I'm sure you kind of get the point. These sound really good goals, but if you really look at them, they are actually very vague. It's difficult to start working with them. So a really good goal, the very basic, is that you start writing down goals where people know whether you have achieved it or not. It's binary. So for example, 200 new customers by June, yes or no? When June comes, if we have 199, no. If you have 220, yes. That's unambiguous. That's, measurable, understandable. Funding proposal is accepted. Yes, no. Easy to measure. I have submitted my master's thesis. You either have submitted it or you haven't. There's no kind of gray area there, is there? Or, maybe we want to use business model canvas. It's used 7 times in our team, or 7 of our teams. You either 7 have used them or 7 haven't. Sounds simple again, doesn't it? But for some reason, we seldom do the work. We seldom take those goals and just start clarifying and having the discussion. What does it mean? Is it doable? Do you understand it? Can we measure this? And here's my list why it is difficult. People can go, it's a complex project. It's a complex world. Our organization is so complex. It's impossible to be clear. Or it's our boss's job. It's not my job to clarify these. Or, there are so many stakeholders, so many networks of people. Or maybe you're doing something very qualitative. I can't put a number on it. Happier customers. You can't put a number on it, can you? One of my favorites, we will see it when it comes. We don't know we don't know what a successful project looks like, but once we are there, we can see if it's successful. Not sure if that's actually very sustainable. We've done it before. That's a good point. But if you've done it before, you should be able to make really good goals and metrics, shouldn't you? Or no one has to do it. I'm sure you have other good reasons why clarifying goals is not done. Maybe there's no time. Maybe nobody's asking for it, and so forth. But my main point is, and I'm trying to give you all here, is in all simplicity, we think that once you set goals in a project, we think it is easy. Better UX for our products. And everybody's kind of nodding, yeah. But the problem is that everybody has a very different understanding what does better UX for our products mean. So we kind of intuitively think that goal setting is easy, but in reality, it is not. Clarifying goals is not easy. You don't remember anything else from this lecture is that, goal setting is difficult. The more people you have, the more, creative, abstract, innovative, forward-looking project you have, the more difficult is the goal setting is. Might be almost impossible, but you should really start doing it anyway. And that's where facilitation comes in. If it's difficult, probably people need facilitation. And here's kind of like playing dumb, also known as facilitation. So questions that you can ask the other people so they can come up with an answer. You're not providing the answer, you're helping the other people to come up with the answer. They're literally, you're playing dumb. Just asking questions. Well, how do you know you have been successful? Okay, what needs to happen 6 months from now that you would be happy? Or how will you know whether that has happened? How do you know that the UX is better now than it was before? That's a good question. How will you know if it has not happened? Are we measuring if something is not happening? And so forth. Okay, always somebody says, we need more people with, AI skills. Okay, more people. How many? Is 1 enough? 2, 10? What are you talking about? And so forth and so forth. So, yeah, facilitation, and I would call also leadership, is actually asking stupid questions. And I'm sure all of you kind of understand this, that it is actually playing dumb. You just ask questions, and you don't kind of have to know the answers either. You just ask really, really good questions and help the clarification process. And one of the things I a couple of times do in projects is that I kind of play dumb with champagne. So literally, I've done it a couple of times that I go and buy a bottle of champagne for the project, and then kind of go like, hey, here's a bottle of very expensive champagne, and let's drink this if we have been successful in 1 month. And then the question is, let's put this into the fridge, and let's write here on a Post-it what has to happen in 1 month so that we can open the champagne. And ta-da, you actually get success criteria. And then we can ask them, are they done? Are they doable, understandable, measurable? Are they beneficial for the project? So it is really kind of like, what needs to happen that you are happy? And you can buy a prize. What needs to happen that if we can drink this champagne in a month? And suddenly it becomes very, very practical. And people start saying, well, we need to have this. Well, is that measurable? Well, if we put it like this, then it is a measurable. And there you go, and there you go. So again, exercise is to clarify the organizational context, impact, and now the third one this week, success criteria. And this is, you can call it facilitation, you can call it leadership, you can call it mentoring, sparring, coaching. Yeah, this is all about. The first question is, what's the context? Next question, what's the desired impact? Third question, how do you know if you have achieved it? And kind of facilitation, leadership becomes this just continuous goal clarification exercise. So I try to put it here graphically. So let's say we want organization culture transformation. And our first objectives, they're a bit vague and ambiguous. Well, let's do the onion. And then we have kind of more contextual objectives. Hey, let's do the temporal onion. Now we have impactful objectives. Hey, let's do the dumb champagne exercise. And now suddenly we have objectives that are doable, understandable, measurable, and beneficial. How do you do this? Well, You ask people, you listen to people, maybe you draw a diagram, maybe you write some text. Is this what you mean? Maybe you're using a whiteboard, maybe you're using some other tool, but you're facilitating. You're helping people to come up with these really good objectives, these objectives that have context, that look beyond the project, and they are DUMB. And hey, it actually works for any project, doesn't it? Just take any project you're doing, and if you are the facilitator, how, probably really good to help the project people understand the context, desired impact, and then turn all that information into doable, understandable, measurable, beneficial goals. Ta-da! Great. Okay. Any comments here? This sounds too familiar. Maybe that's good news. Anyway. So how do we actually then do this? Let's take a step back. Where are we now on this course with the exercises? So remember the first lecture, we have to make organizations responsive to be more competitive. We talked about the fog of uncertainty. We talked about different lenses, that there's no single truth. And then we talked about the change is probably done by action, by behavior, not by PowerPoints. And here's what we have. Maybe you are an organization, change leader. You have a vision, the new culture. We have a change program that was last week, the 6 foundation stones. We have done the context exercise. We have done the impact exercise. And now this week, you're going to be the doable, understandable, measurable exercise. And you remember this, that in uncertainty, very difficult to plan it. So we're going to build a new culture. The culture is about doing, and doing is about lean startup, agile, and design. And there's a lot of these things, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with them. You have the business model canvases, and you have different kind of retrospectives and workshops. You might have Kanbans, you might have these Scrum, agile development models, and so forth and so forth. And here's my take why all of these are nowadays, and have been for at least past decade, the kind of the medicine for uncertainty and the medicine for building organizations that are more resilient. So kind of put this in the V diagram. So we start with the left, that there is uncertainty, and we want to build an organization that has competitive advantage in that uncertainty. And the first lecture we talked about the kind of the answer that in uncertainty, we need the whole company culture to be responsive. And what it means is that, our routines, tools, practices are the key. That's what John Shook kind of taught us. And that's why we actually have that's why kind of the tool, we have so many of these tools and canvases and, project-based things. We have dailies and, all of these things have come to the corporate world in the past decade because these actually imply certain routines. These imply certain ways of thinking. They actually shape how people do things. So suddenly we're changing people's behavior. We're changing how they do things. It becomes more tangible. And then once people behave in a similar way, once they have certain tangibility that, we put Post-its on a wall, we use this canvas and so forth, we start building shared thinking, shared values, shared meanings and all that. And that's the key to having an autonomous, responsive and shared organization culture. And that's kind of the point. That's the point why we talk so much about the lean startup and lean tools and these philosophies and design thinking, because these are very, very practical. And there is this belief that once enough people start using them in their own way, it scales up. And suddenly we have people who have shared values, customer centricity or, prototyping or asking questions and so forth. And it actually becomes from the tools, just like we talked in the first lecture. But where do I start? So which tool to use? So is design thinking the answer? Or should I start using agile philosophies in my company culture? Which medicine should I take? So let's quickly go through them first. And kind of what is agile all about? So Agile comes from, I think this is 1990s. It comes from software development. And there you can see the Agile, manifesto, the principles that individuals and interactions are over processes and tools. Working software over documentation, customer collaboration over, contract negotiations. Responding to change is always kind of wins, following a plan. And all of you who have a software or, programming background, these are quite familiar. Even older philosophy, of course, is the lean philosophy, kind of thinking how do you actually make things work better, or actually you don't have any waste. That's where the word lean comes from. And you have these things like situational approach. You need to understand the context, and everything starts from understanding the context. You have continuous capability development, so people reflect and think about it. They're kind of open to, developing their own capabilities. And the same goes for the process improvement. All the time looking at how did we do this last week? How did we work last month? What can be improved? What is wasteful, and so forth. Another, house. Lean people are really like these houses, where you can see kind of this action reflection in that diagram in the middle. And you have this kind of systematic approach to problems. That the problems can be anything, but you have a kind of this system that you have systematically approached them. And the same goes for the waste elimination. And there you can see in this diagram, I copied from somewhere, it is that you create a learning organization. So that becomes already an organizational value. Now, of course, we have the good old Six Sigma Lean, where you can identify different, wastes of lean. You start looking at, your inventories and look at the processes of all of these. Is there any weighting? All of that goes. Lean startup is a little bit different, but very, very popular in the past 10, 15 years, where the whole point is, again, we have this circle that you build, measure, learn. You kind of start doing things. You measure the impact of those things, and then you learn from them. And you kind of do this cycle on a weekly basis rather than a monthly basis. The faster you can do this. And then, of course, we have the design thinking, good old design thinking, where you kind of, you're open to, we start with a problem, and then we, diverge and try to understand the problem, and then we go back and, go try to focus on some kind of a solution, and then it opens up a new discussion. So it is kind of this having discussions, doing research, but also going into concrete things and making decisions, and then opening it all again. A really good book I recommend, which you can find, I have this link in the slides today, later on, that is free online, is Johnny Schneider's Understanding Design Thinking, Lean and Agile. And these pictures are from that book, this one and the next one, is that, okay, we have these different philosophies when they come about organization culture, about leadership, about running organizations. We have the lean mindset, design thinking mindset, and the agile mindset. And if you can see the small pictures here, you can see that there are these certain values and things that they emphasize. And he really nicely puts in that kind of the book that, okay, what if we look these together? What do they look like if we blend these? And I would say partly because where they come from, where design comes from, and where agile comes from, and where lean comes from, they look at the organization a little bit from different angles, and you can see it here. So kind of the design mindset is very close to how you form a vision. How do we form a vision of what our organization wants to be? Which is, of course, close to strategy as well. Now, the lean mindset is actually a lot about how you organize people. So that's kind of when you blend these together, the vision, the design vision, and the lean organization design, then you kind of get, you get strategic things. How do we, build strategies? And then, of course, the agile mindset, software engineering, is very solution oriented, that we should have working software all the time. So that's what it adds to this mix, is that in addition that how are we visionary with very customer-centric visions, how do we organize people into a learning organization, and at the same time, we're actually doing something concrete, that we are delivering value all the time. That's what Agile brings there. And that's what Schneider says in the book, that if you can take all of these, like in that picture, if these are like vitamin pills, if you just eat them all at the same time, what do you actually get? So he says that you kind of get your vision setting becomes that you're really good at exploring problems, and you're really good at ideating solutions. For strategy work, it gives you actionable cores. It kind of helps you to be concrete and actionable in your strategy setting. And in the solution delivery, you are very adaptable. You are very evolutionary. You don't think that this is the right answer, but you're always open to changes. And then maybe for this course, the last point he makes is about the organization. That the key values of an organization, if you take all of these schools of thought, is that doing is learning. Learning is not separate from doing. You don't go to a course, just like you're doing now, but you actually learn a lot by just doing things. And then second point that he makes, that you should have, people are independent, but somehow you need to align them, that they're all kind of going in the same direction. And then the last one is value-based portfolio thinking. And by portfolio thinking, he means it's kind of zooming out from individual initiatives and projects and looking them as kind of a bigger thing. Another really good example, and I have a link to this, is a talk by Jeff Gotthelf. And you can find this talk in the internet. It's another kind of like, okay, if they put all of these things together, then here's Gotthelf's 10 principles that work with any methodology. But kind of the last thing that before we have our break, I'm going to ask you is this, that, okay, these are all great. And, you can take lists like these and, start using them. But if, using my medicine metaphor here, if these are the medicine, if these are the vitamins that organizations and change leaders need to take, what's actually the illness? What's wrong with organizations? Why do they need these vitamins? Why do they need this lean agile design thinking? And here's my thing. So all of these principles, all of these tools and canvases and all of these philosophies and approaches, what are the actual questions that they are trying to answer? So what's kind of the big root cause that is causing for people to look for these medicine or vitamins? And I'm saying that it boils down to these two questions. That people working in organizations don't know, or it's not clear to them, what is valuable work or what is valued in general. And I'm going to dig into them a little bit more. And yes, there's a lot about, how to work in a team and how to, work with uncertainty, how to communicate with people and so forth and so forth. There's a lot of good stuff in these philosophies, or these are the problems that these philosophies are trying to fix. But I would say that the key questions are this, that these are the two questions that people don't necessarily have an answer in the organization. And I think it shows in the language that we use, or have been using in the past at least 10, 20 years. You can hear big bosses and CEOs and everybody saying that we should be, a value-driven company. In our work, we should reduce, waste and focus on value. We need to be valuable to our customers. At the end of the day, do we create value? Our company is not about money or profits. We are about value. Or maybe it's your boss shouting to you, deliver value. Yeah, but what does value mean? And I think there are just two. The answer isn't this. It isn't that the CEO or your boss tells you that this is what value is. It's a little bit more complicated. Because I think the question of what is valuable work boils down to questions, very practical and simple questions like these. You go to the job, you have all of your tasks in your laptop. How do you know which one is most important? What is valuable work? Maybe you ask yourself, why is our company doing these things? You don't know what is valuable work. Are we wasting our time here in this meeting? Well, maybe you think this is important, but do others think? You don't know what is valuable work. Should I be doing this? Should I be taking this course? Shouldn't I be doing my job? Well, it's a question you ask if you don't know what is valuable work. Is this expected of me? And, what if I just sit here and act like I'm working? The salary comes. So that's what I mean by valuable work. Can people prioritize? Do people understand the context? Do people understand what is more valuable in the big picture than others? And I think that's a key problem. Now, the other question was that what is valued in general? And by this, I mean questions such like this. Can I go and say to my boss that this project is stupid? Is that valued in general? Would the boss think that that's a valuable feedback? Do people appreciate ambition here? Can I go out there and tell everybody, I want to be number one. I want to be the best in the world. Is that valued in this company? What about looks? Maybe you get a feeling that nobody's rewarding initiative here. Maybe initiative is not valued in general. Can I dress like this? Do I need to wear a tie and a suit? What's valued in general? Can I be critical at all? What if I fail? Is failure valued at all? Is that valued in general? Or can I make a joke? What kind of jokes can I make here? What's valued in general in this organization? So value, of course, it's a loaded word. There's a lot of meaning packed into one. It's very condensed. But it can also be very tangible and very understandable if everybody knows what it actually means, more or less. So what does value mean? Maybe you're asking this question, Risto, you are preaching there about value, and the key question is, what is valuable? What is valuable work? So what does it mean for different organizations? Well, dear people, dear friends and family, there are no ready answers. You might have guessed this. We only have shared meaning. Hey, that's the cliffhanger for the next part. Any questions? Let's see. Interesting that you say the culture comes from tools when the Agile Manifesto says the opposite, individuals' interaction over processes and tools. Yeah, but that's kind of a principle that when you make decisions, you appreciate the individuals and the interactions, but the tools are there in the background. My point being that if you give the same tool to 100 people, it will definitely shape how they do their work, which shapes the culture. Maybe you're familiar with the business model kind of lean canvas. It definitely shapes how people are doing. But it goes back to the point we have been making. The tool is not the thing. The tool is there to facilitate. And that's why I would say that at the end of the day, you appreciate the people and the interactions. But if you want to align a group of people, 50, 500, 5,000 people, to be customer-centric, then introduce them a tool that helps them think customer-centric. And suddenly you're building a culture. That's the point. Excellent question, Laura. Thanks.
Okay, can I ask, add or pinpoint a couple of things? Because
just turned 5 o'clock, so yeah, Jari, go ahead.
Yeah, very shortly. So meaning there's shared meanings. So and when you raise this question of why communication is so hard, so I think this very, very fundamental thing is to building the shared meanings all the time, because it's as we have been talking about this interpretation that we all have own lenses and so on. So in all, building culture, it's a process of continuously building shared meanings, and we really neglect this and underestimate this all the time, to be honest.
But I do want to introduce this kind of thinking about alignment and shared meanings, because remember from last time I started that the key thing is that people should understand what's valuable work in an organization. And then they can be autonomous, then they can make independent good decisions that they know this is more valuable than this. Of course, it's more easily said than done. But the basic question is, how do you get people to work towards the same values? Whatever the values are, values might be, making a lot of money. The value might be, helping children in poverty. Nevertheless, you want to align people to have the same direction. And the answer is sharing the same meanings. And let's be honest about it. Numbers are great. Numbers are fantastic if you have a lot of people and everybody needs to be staring on a dumb goal, on a goal that understands. Numbers are unambiguous. Numbers are easy to communicate, clear to communicate, and they're easily to focus for the same people. And that's why the world is more or less run by numbers. Last month, our NPS score was 5.2. This month, it should be 6.7. And everybody understands 5.2 has to be 6.7. Very clear goals. And then we do whatever we do to get it to 6.7. The stock prices or even competitions. We just had the Eurovision competition. At the end of the day, it was numbers that made the decision because it was clear who had the biggest number and that was the winner. The numbers are great. However, and you almost guessed that however comes here. We are having more and more things in our organizations that are difficult to quantify or difficult to put into a number. So how do you build shared meanings in that case? So I put, a list here on the left-hand side. Some things that people and organizations are saying that we want to be a, performance-driven company, innovative, creative. So of course, the thing is that these cannot be your meanings as such. You just cannot take, trustworthy and think that everybody understands it in the same way. But you actually need somebody to facilitate those meanings for yourself first as a leader or a person doing the work, and then to others. And that's where we get to the core of the facilitation. Now, I'm using very simple, I'm using a lot of simple stuff. I'm a guy who likes simplicity. I'm using this model by Etienne Wenger, who's a well-known social scientist. And he was actually in the book that is referenced there below. He was studying this kind of insurance company call center, and he was looking, how do people share meanings? What's the human process of creating shared meaning? And he really nicely just points out that there's these two parts. That if we want to share meanings, let's say that all of us want to understand what trustworthiness means. And collectively, that we more or less understand the same way what we mean by it. There's two parts. The first one is the part, what he calls participation. And this is the process that looks something typically like that in that picture. So we're having a discussion. We maybe have a key concept. So like in this example, what is our main customer group? It's not that clear. You need to have participation. You need to have action. You need to have, people connecting things, having discussions. You need to have people workshopping. What do we collectively think is our main customer group? I'm sure you are all familiar with this and know the value of this. However, remember the other side of his kind of diagram was that there needs to be reification. And by reification means simply that we need to make things concrete. It's not enough that we just have discussions and we have thoughts or, we have agreement with two people. The process requires that we write things down. It requires maybe we make documents, we make plans, maybe we make a contract with our client. We make a tool, we write an email summarizing the workshop, or maybe we make a poster that shows that what's our main customer group and all of this. These are all reifications. We're taking the talks and the thoughts and the discussions and making them into concrete. And what he emphasizes is that they always come as a pair. And also he emphasizes that it's kind of an infinite loop. That you can imagine that we had this fantastic workshop where we decided what's our main customer group. And then Jari wrote the email where, he summarized the workshop. Then the email was sent to that person. And then we discussed the email. So it kind of becomes a participation. Then we wrote a new version. So it becomes this continuous of we participate and then we put things into concrete and then we participate again. Sorry, need to cough. So this diagram also shows something that I think is intuitively very simple. that we can have too much of either of these. So maybe in your organization, when you're trying to fit, build shared meaning, whatever it is, what is trustworthiness? What's our main customer group? What does value mean for us? There's too much participation. This is what Wenger says. Becomes a problem if there's no coordination. There's no scaling up. There's nothing to anchor the discussions. And we might just have all over the same workshop all over again. I don't know if any of you have been in a situation that, you go into a workshop where we're thinking, what's our main customer group? But then you're like, didn't we have this workshop 6 months ago? But that's the situation where there's too much participation. For example, you just have this fantastic workshop. Nobody does any documentation. The other side is also probably very familiar, that if, participation, reification dominates, if there's too much reification, which means that there are no discussions, no participation, then we are in a situation where people don't commit to these things, people don't feel ownership, there's no diversity of thought, people don't get, there's no interaction, there's no critique, there's no feedback. You just get the official document that says, this is our main customer group. And you're kind of like, okay, what does it mean for me? Do I understand this? Do you understand this the same way? And then you're kind of looking for the participation part. And this is the classical example that you just get orders from top down. That you're not there is no participation, literally saying. So the very simple, just what is facilitation all about when it comes, to very basics is, when we talk about helping other people to come up with an answer, it is the exercises you have been making or doing together. They are very much participation, but when you deliver the exercises, the assignments to us, those are reifications. And then when I read your answers and present them here, they are, participation again. They I really, as you can see, I really like this model. It really gives you an idea what is facilitation with human beings at the end of the day all about. And really hammering in what is facilitation about. So like Wenger says that we can take tools, we can take concepts, we can take ideas from the outside world. It's like a business model canvas. We can take the business model canvas from the outside world. But they can't be our meanings as such. We need to start negotiating what does it mean for us with other people. Even if we are alone, we need to understand what does this mean to me? How do I understand this? Which means we need people. We need people who are curating the reifications. We need people who facilitate those participations. So if I put it visually, we need change agents who are like, museum curators. They have all the reifications, just like a library, that they can go and say, hey, this workshop last April, this is what they said. I have the reification here. And at the same time, they are the ones who are not just, in the archives, but they're the ones who are driving that human participation. And of course, this is what leadership nowadays is very much about. You as a leader, you know what all the workshops said. You have the documents. You're collecting all of the information that people talked about, all the emails and the posters. You're on top of things. But at the same time, you're working actively to listen to people, engaging people, communicating clearly back to people. This is what our strategy reification says. This is what our strategy document says. What do you think about it? So you are doing both things. So we need someone. We need somebody who is looking over and keeping track of all the the key concrete things we're doing, and who's helping people to participate, to create those shared meanings and so forth. Give you a very quick example. This is many years ago. Halton is a Finnish company who actually does a lot of things, but like machines like this, actually. makes, professional kitchens and all of these things. And maybe if you see a street kitchen somewhere, the machinery and the air conditioning and all of that is probably done by Halton. It's actually a very international Finnish company. And they did this work where their company mission is the thing that it says there. Our mission is to enable people's well-being in demanding indoor environments. Okay. Sounds interesting. But the story is that actually when I listened to the story from the chairman of the board of Halton, what he told was that they actually worked a very long time with that one mission statement. They took all the leaders in the company, and all the leaders kind of talked with everybody in the company and talked about what is our mission? What do you think is our mission? A lot of participation, a lot of reification, a lot of participation again, and kind of worked about the shared meaning of this individual sentence. So more or less everybody in the company understands what this sentence means and what are all the discussions that are behind it. And once they had this sentence, then the story goes, then things started happening. So he told that, this became the framework for their decision making. Their shareholders, it was easier for them to commit to the company because they started understanding what's their mission, starting point for the growth strategy, helping them to differentiate in the market, tool for selecting partners. But maybe most importantly, with this, relatively big effort, they got commitment from the employees. People could start seeing the context. This is the big mission. So that's the ultimate desired impact for the company. And then they could see what's their role in the big picture. Not because the sentence would tell it, but because of the process they did, the discussions, the participations, the reifications. So just to hammer it in, it's not because this mission sentence is anything special. I mean, if you look at the sentence, our mission is to enable people's well-being in demanding indoor environments. I don't know if anybody's working for Halton here, but, as an outsider, I'm kind of like, well, that's nice, but, I'm not that inspired. But that's not the point. It's all the huge effort building the meaning for this sentence that did the magic. And you can imagine how does that affect the company culture. All the things that they have done and having discussed, and they have probably communicated and reported and gotten feedback and listened to people. And it all boils down to this sentence kind of becomes almost like a symbol for the activities or the participation reification that they did from top-down leadership, that people would believe that leadership is serious about it. Great. Any questions? Attendance form. Where's the attendance form? Give you a few seconds if you have any questions or comments, because next I'm going to ask you to go into breakout rooms. Oh, by the way, we got the feedback that you really like the breakout rooms, which is great. And somebody wrote that could there be more of them?
Well, I can promise that next time we will have twice.
Thank you, Jari.
So
see, Jari is more customer-centric than I am. Jari, anything to add? We have a couple of minutes before the breakout.
Well, of course, I would like to share here my experience of facilitating this kind of 1,000-person dialogue on building a cornerstone of leadership, good leadership for an organization, and it was a similar story. That of course some can invent those very simplified cornerstones in just 10 minutes, but it was a process of 2 months, and it was a nice opportunity to facilitate this kind of 800 people dialogue, where they were elaborating the ideas, what are the key cornerstone of good leadership in that organization, and it was really similar to this, that you can see that, okay, there's nothing special, but the process was special, and there was a lot of ownership and commitment after that. And so is really important.
And it's of course the same that you said, Jari, kind of, it reflects in the way we make you do these exercises. Like we have been saying, is that, the tool is not the thing. And even the answers, when we look at the exercises you deliver and we look what you have answered, to be honest, we're not that interested in that. We're interested in the reflection. Because just like this Halton mission statement, your answers, they are important for you and somebody should have answers. But it's much more interesting kind of the process of how that answer was created. That's the key in the facilitation. That's kind of, as a facilitator, that's an important product that you're creating, is the experience of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to remind and pinpoint one more aspect, because we tend to think that those ideas we generate are important. But when we generate, this generation process really change and improve our relationships. And because all meaning making happens in relations. And that's also building our culture of trust and so forth. So it's not just creating those outcomes from communication process, but it's the communication process itself that improves our relationality and improve our trust and be capable to have a good conversation. So there's this kind of underlying thing as well, which is quite essential.
Yeah, that reminds me, but I'm sure that I hope everybody's had this experience, that maybe you have talked with somebody, or maybe you have been in a workshop and you leave that workshop going like, that was really fantastic. That, that person is really smart, really happy I'm working with these people. I can't really remember what the workshop actually ended with.
Sure.
Kind of that we do already appreciate that if the process is good, that the kind of the cultures we're building, the interactions, the socialities, and when we are a group of people together, that's become super important.
And one more thing is also remembering that all meanings are temporary. They are kind of processual then, and we make this again and again and retell and so on. Remembering this, that meaning making is a process that's continuous, and we make these meanings, they are not fixed. And that's also, I think it's also this kind of hopeful idea that we can change things by creating new meanings as well. And do we actually do that continuously?
Yeah, a couple of good comments here. Juho has a nice underwear metaphor, which is kind of what Jari, you just said, that the meanings are not fixed, that you should change them and you should have a look at the meanings occasionally, that not carving them in stone. Okay, now we're going to do this. I'm going to ask you first, or I'm going to give you a couple of times in peace and quiet, a couple of minutes that you can think about the question. And then after 2 minutes, we're going to put you into the breakout rooms. So before I'm going to tell you the task, okay, for 2 minutes, we're going to be quiet and you can think about the answers. Then at least 10 minutes, we have a little bit more time. So maybe we put you 12 minutes in the breakout rooms, because that was feedback that you would like to have more time as well. But remember, in a breakout room, listen to other people, give everybody time to talk. If you just want to listen and don't want to talk, that's perfectly fine. That's no problem. And just enjoy the variety of people we have here. Okay, here's the task. So first 2 minutes in silence, take a context you're familiar with. Context that you're trying to make a team work, or you have teamwork and you try to make it done. Or maybe you have, trying to create a successful workshop, or maybe, generally you're managing a product, maybe you're running a business. Anyway, you're in a position that you have a bunch of people and you need to get something done. That's the point. Bring back to your mind some experience you have had, or maybe you are already. And the question is, what kind of meanings you probably have to negotiate? What are the words? What are the concepts? What are the key things that you need to start having discussions that everybody understands these words, these meanings? more or less the same way. A couple of years ago, I did this workshopping with Finnish business leaders and work-life professionals, and we put it into this booklet. And there was kind of this question that we talked in those workshops. What are the meanings that these people see that typically organizations have to curate? And the things that the corporate leaders and experts brought up, I don't know what you think about this, is that kind of obvious. First of all, what is change? If you're a change leader or the company wants change, probably a meaning you need to start negotiating. What does it mean? What is considered work? I think that's a very big question. We take it for granted that we understand that this is work and this isn't work. But when we get to more abstract levels of intellectual work, creative work, what is work anymore? If I take a nap in the middle of my work day so that my brain is functioning better in the afternoon, is that nap work? Because it makes me productive. Who's responsible for lifelong learning? You know, we are living in times that it's not enough to get one, degree, one education, but you actually need to have this mindset that you're learning at your job all the time. You're open to new things, you're open to learning, you're looking for growth. Who's responsible for that? Are you as an individual? Is it your employer? Is it the, society? Is it the school system of your government? What is it? Who is responsible for this? What is valued? What is value? That's what I talked about. Meta skills required. What are the skills that are not those traditional, skills of, engineering or marketing or advertisement or business analyst? But we all recognize that there are these skills that who brings people together, who does the reification, these kind of skills that are not formally talked about. Jari is going to be talking about these later on in this course. And sorry, the last one you cannot see quite well, but it says, what are the negotiating? What are the desired borders and silos? One of you wrote there that the boundaries. We need to have boundaries in an organization. When you put people together, we need rules and boundaries that we can work effectively. Which boundaries we want and which boundaries we don't want anymore. That's something we need to negotiate. That's something we probably need to talk about. So, but actually, maybe some of you are thinking, I posed a question, which of this medicine you should take, but I never gave you an answer. Which one is the best? Design, agile, lean startup. Yeah. Well, you can almost guess that I'm going to give you an answer that looks pretty much what we have been doing and talking all this time. Of course, the answer is it depends, and you should start working towards it. And just, there is no ready answer in this, but it's all about how you create the shared meanings in your organization. Whether it's a small team, whether it's a large organization, you need to start understanding the shared meanings. And here's just another visualization of, maybe you take that looks like the business model canvas. So that's you take it from the outside world. So maybe that's your approach. And then you do participation. People use the business model canvas. And then you apply it. You say that, we work in a non-profit. Actually, if we change these words in the business model canvas, it works better for us. So you make your own version, then you try it out, and then you make another version, and then you try it out. So actually you start building the answer for yourself. It is not, we live in a world where we think that there are ready answers out there, but most of the time there aren't. You need to start with something and then make it your own. So curating, facilitating, start with your best guess. Maybe design thinking is something you're familiar with. Start with that. And then you start this process of making it, adapting it into your context, into your impacts, into what you're looking for. So one way of thinking about it is looking at, taking the same Wenger thing and looking at this kind of duality. That at the one end, we have the people, we have who they, how they think, how they behave, and what do they understand. And then we are introducing design tools or maybe, agile tools or agile processes into an organization. And that's the beginning. These shape each other. The tools shape how people behave. People's behavior should shape what the tools are or how the processes go. They come as a pair again. And let's put this into the temporal onion, the exercise you did last week. So if the question is, which do I choose? So let's say that your project is here. You have this change project. This project is about changing our work habits in our department. So yeah, let's try to put it here. So, what's the long-term goal? What has happened after 1 year? After a year, this project ended. What's the desired impact? Okay, let's reverse engineer. What about 6 months? What about 1 month? So the question is, just like the professional golfer, what do we need to have at the end of the project so we can get to the 1 month and then to the 6 months and then to the desired impact? Which, of course, brings us, what's our history? Who are we? Are we an engineering organization? Are we a software developer organization? Are we more of a design organization? Are we a marketing organization? That actually really matters when you choose any of these. Which one is a good starting point? Which one is most familiar? And, which school of thought should we start with? And that's when kind of like, you need to know, what are you aiming at? You need to understand the past. Where do people come from? What kind of prejudice, what kind of thinking they have, how familiar they are with these tools. So that's one way of, showing how to make these tools and trying to understand. Because there are no ready answers. You need to start facilitating their meanings, but you should probably do this exercise before you do it. Understand the past, look into the future. What is the desired impact? Good. And then, last but not least, what is the exercise for this week? Well, yeah, it is about criteria for champagne, also known as how to create good goals, good and clear objectives that are doable, understandable, measurable, and beneficial. By the end of next Monday, if you deliver these, then I have the whole Tuesday to look into them. So here's the slide with the assignment. Again, you get a pair and you're doing the pair's work. So you are facilitating. Again, the pair chooses a project, can be the same project, can be a new project, old project, existing project, whatever suits best. And then you start asking, what are the desired impacts? Once that project is done, what's the desired impact in 6 months, in 3 months, in 1 month? And now when your pair is answering you, you need to play dumb. You need together try to make them, are the impacts, are they doable, understandable, measurable, and are they beneficial? Remember, beneficial for the company, for the organization, for the context. That's why you need the context. You don't know what is success within the project. It is the outside context that defines it. And especially pay attention to the measurable. Remember what I talked about earlier. Good measurability is something that you know whether it is or it is not. It should not be vague. And then you switch roles. And then, just like previously, do the sketches, do the answers, and then do the reflections. Those are the most important things. Those are the ones we read, those are the ones we shared. But also, you cannot do the reflections unless you really do the exercises as well. So we want you to do both. Answer the questions, facilitate the other, make the metrics dumb, do the reflections. Okay? That's it. That's for the lecture. Half of the lecture is done. Next week, Jari will be in charge. I will be more in the passenger seat, so to speak. And Jari is going to be talking about facilitation in depth. And here is the links for the readings. There's actually the video link. So, if you have many dogs and you haven't walked them yet, you could just take one more dog and listen to Jeff Gotthart's talk, or you can watch it on video. And then I put in green color the Schneider link. If you put that into Google, then you will find the whole book as a PDF. fully recommend it. And then a couple of other links as well.